In fiscal year 2026, the department will merge components that will work in overlapping areas and make our law enforcement and grant-making efforts more effective. We will emerge from this work as a leaner organization, better equipped
to infringe on the rights of, persecute, and in some cases, execute American citizens. That is AG Bondi stumping for her lunatic idea of combining the ATF and the DEA. I know that some of you are sick of me yelling about this, but I'm not going to stop because it is a horrible idea. This video was brought to you by Medical Gear Outfitters. They are my go-to stop for all things medical. It doesn't matter whether you need something that just holds a bunch of Band-Aids and maybe some aspirin or something like that, or if you need an actual trauma kit. If you don't have a trauma kit in your house or in your vehicle, then I highly suggest that you go check our people out at Medical Gear Outfitters, and they offer all of you a discount. You can find all of that information over at the affiliates page and all the relevant places, and use that to great effect. Combining an agency that has a finite amount of resources and has to divide their time between actually performing the lawful functions of what it is that they do, like inspecting federal firearms licensees, issuing those licenses, currently approving Form 4s and Form 1s, Form 3s, et cetera, and managing the e-form system. And
oh, no. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do?
Combining that agency with somebody who has an order of magnitude more resources, more personnel, and training, real teeth, has got to be the dumbest idea that I have ever heard. And it doesn't shock me that it comes from her whatsoever, because this person consistently displays a blind spot for the actual issues surrounding firearms and firearms rights, because it's clear that she does not understand that the ATF, with the law structure that is currently in place, can be used to attack American citizens. And she displays it herself. This is going to be a long one, but here it is.
Your budget request for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, proposes a cut of 26% below the current level. How can you justify such a massive cut without inevitably weakening ATF's ability to help our state and local law enforcement fight illegal gun trafficking? How many ATF law enforcement officers and industry operations investigators do you anticipate will be lost to attrition as a result of this funding reduction you're proposing?
I am a career prosecutor, and I believe in keeping America safe, making America safe. First, what we're doing is ATF is going to be brought over with DEA. Everyone knows, everyone sitting up here, guns and drugs go together. They go together. We're going to make it more efficient. What I will tell you will not be happening is ATF agents will not be knocking on the doors of legal gun owners in the middle of the night asking them about their guns. They're going to be out on the streets. If I can finish, they're going to be out on the streets.
I have three
No.
minutes.
You asked me a question.
I did, and
you asked me a question.
And you haven't
I'm gonna
answered
answer
my
it.
question.
So they're going to be out on the streets working
You haven't
hand in hand
answered
with
my question.
DEA
You
to
haven't
violate.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like an answer to my question. And the question is not being answered. How many ATF law enforcement officers and industry operations investigators do you anticipate will be lost to attrition as a result of the funding reduction you are proposing? You are proposing a 26% cut to ATF for fiscal year 2026, as well as a 4.4% cut to DEA. So you're going to merge the two agencies together, and then you're going to shortchange their resources, so neither one of them will be able to do the job that they have been designed to do. You've got a 34% cut to the high-intensity drug trafficking areas program, no dedicated money at all for the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force. So, in my view, it's fair to say that the Trump administration proposal shortchanges federal efforts to stop illegal gun trafficking and federal efforts to stop the flow of dangerous illegal drugs like fentanyl.
As I was attempting to answer your question very calmly, unlike you,
Excuse me,
what I was
Madam
saying,
Attorney General. Answer yes or no. Tell me what the numbers are. I don't want to hear all of your filibuster about this. Go ahead, please. Tell us the numbers.
So we are reorganizing. ATF agents want to be out on the street.
Okay,
working
let me
with
answer the
DEA
question for you.
agents.
I'm going to answer it for you. Page. Mr. Chairman, you give me a certain amount of time, and I have a high respect for you, but I don't have to listen, nor do my colleagues have to listen to a filibuster when it's a simple question. But I have an answer to your question. It's page 146 of the department's fiscal year 2026 budget, and the performance summary explicitly says, and let me quote, ATF will eliminate 541 industry operation investigators, reducing ATF's capacity to regulate the firearms and explosive industries by approximately 40% in fiscal year 2026. ATF will perform fewer regulatory inspections. And the department summary goes on to say, and let me quote, ATF anticipates a reduction of approximately 284 support personnel and 186 agents based on historical attrition patterns, and these personnel cuts will impact ATF across various functions, unquote. If the capacity to regulate firearms industry is reduced by 40%, if you are losing 186 ATF law enforcement agents, on top of that, it is clear the direction you are headed with this budget, and that's what it is, isn't it? The proposal will weaken our ability to stop gun trafficking, and it will greatly reduce ATF support for state and local law enforcement that helps them prevent and solve violent crimes. It's a bad proposal.
Do you want to hear my answer?
I mean, talk about a battle of two airheads. I was really hoping they would pop each other, but as far as like the proposal is concerned, I agree with the Congresswoman. It's a terrible proposal. I do like the concept of reducing the overall footprint of the ATF, but here's the thing. By merging those two things together, in the short term, perhaps you have some relief as far as ATF going to people's doors that they shouldn't be going to and messing with them. See the clips that I showed you earlier in the video. You might have a reduction in that in the short term, but in the long term, by combining those two agencies together, you still have the underlying regulations in place. And hopefully the big, beautiful bill with the SBR and suppressor provisions will be passed and they'll stay in there, and at least those regulations will have like half of the tools that they could use to abuse citizens relieved of them. Maybe silver lining there. However, the idea that you are going to hand the next rabid anti-gun activist group that comes into power nearly unlimited resources as it relates to relative to what they've currently been working with to abuse American citizens who are exercising their Second Amendment rights. This woman is infuriating that she even talked about it in that segment, and she just doesn't get that, yeah, for right now, maybe, but you are literally going to hand that over to people that want to use it against the citizens. How you could square creating that is narcissistic to no end. I just cannot get over it. Let's continue.
In 3 seconds? You mentioned regulatory functions. We will not be having ATF agents go to the doors of gun owners in the middle of the night asking them about their guns, period. They will be out on the streets with DEA, guns and drugs
How many
go
are
together.
gone?
We are not, it will be attrition. We are not firing agents. They will be working.
How
with
many have
DEA.
taken attrition?
Can I tell you that they all want to be on the streets? They want to be doing their jobs. They want to be
But you're getting them
seizing
off
guns.
the streets.
They
You're
want
getting
to.
them
We're
off the
putting
streets.
them on the
And-
streets.
and
They want to be working with
you,
DEA.
you are getting them off the
will be
streets. There is no
efficient.
clear, and Mr.
We will
Chairman,
be
I yield back my
efficient.
time. I yield back my time. Let's get some answers here.
They want to be on the street, but they're ATF agents that do things that aren't on the street. So, like for example, the Nibbin work where they match the cartridges to the guns is critical, and I'm very concerned that some of the cuts you're going to make are going to impact that. And the Nibbin pieces are critical for state and local law enforcement, like you used to be, because a lot of them don't have the resources to track it down, and the information that they can get. You can turn it around in 48 hours. So the man who attempted to assassinate now President Trump, the connection that was made was through this apparatus, this approach. The same thing with the Minnesota assassin. So that's an area where we can't afford to have those kind of cuts, I don't think, at this time.
You want to talk about reorganizing something that I agree with is the Nibbin work should not be an ATF function. It should be a core FBI function, and FBI function only. The ATF was originally instituted as a tax collection agency, and their functions should facilitate the structure of issuing federal firearms licenses so that American citizens can gain access to their Second Amendment right, and under the current structure, even though it's unconstitutional, facilitate transfer taxes and excise taxes on firearms. I don't agree with either of those things, but it is currently the law of the land. That's the only thing that they should be doing. They should be stripped of all law enforcement capability whatsoever. We've seen what they do with that.
And the performance of fewer regulatory inspections. I had gun dealers in my district who needed those inspections to take place. And important findings have been made, certainly with respect to tracking crime guns and cracking down on gun dealers who are working illicitly. I'm not saying they all do. I mean, many of them operate in the right way, but the only way to track it down is through inspections that have to be aggressive. And by the way, even under the current regime or the previous regime, I think some of them didn't get inspections for maybe every 10 years or so. So it wasn't like it's a constant harassment piece.
Real quick interjection. That's an outright lie. I get inspected every other year. Tell me that isn't politically motivated. What the congressman is missing here is that over the course of the last several years, the political activism that has been puppeteered at the ATF has depleted all goodwill between federal firearms licensees and the ATF. It's forever broken.
When you were the Attorney General in Florida, after the Parkland shooting, my understanding is you moved to ban gun sales to people under 21. Is that a position that you would take now as the Attorney General? I have a bill, H.R. 2368, which does something like that. I would be interested in if you'd be willing to co-sponsor or support that bill. You also moved to enact red flag laws, allowing a judge temporarily to confiscate weapons when he or she viewed that the person was at risk of hurting himself or someone else. Is that a position you would continue to support now? And the last one is ghost guns. Ghost guns, I don't think you took a position on it back when you were the AG in Florida, but we've had 2 bills come through here in the Congress, all Democratic co-sponsors. I think there's no argument that ghost guns have any, appropriate use on the street. They only help criminals avoid prosecution. Would you support a legislative ban on ghost guns? And with that, I yield back.
Oh, I bet she does. I bet she loves all of those proposals and would jump at any opportunity to support those that she could. Track record is as follows.
So what we want to do is let law enforcement come in and take the gun.
All eyes are currently on the Senate parliamentarian when it comes to the big, beautiful bill and all the provisions in it. One of the silver linings of all eyes are currently on the Senate parliamentarian. and she is currently going through the big, beautiful bill determining what can and cannot pass the bird rule. Well, we are concerned about, obviously, the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act and all that sort of stuff, which hopefully we'll have news on soon. They should pass, considering that they're tax provisions, but, you know, we are talking about somebody with a D in front of their name. However, what she did say is that as far as a vote on combining government agencies, executive agencies, that cannot pass the bird rule. So that will have to go to a full floor vote, and the filibuster will be in place. So quite literally, the Democrats are going to save our bacon on this one. Now, I've said this before, I'll say this again just to reiterate in closing. Technically speaking, they can do this without the consent of Congress. They could move personnel around and all that sort of stuff. And in everything but name, combine the DEA and the ATF. They can just shuffle the personnel and just nobody shows up for work at the ATF, right? However, when it comes to funding that in an appropriations bill, that's the purview of Congress. So they can do that if they want. However, there'll be no money earmarked for that particular thing, and they would have to operate basically under the budget of the DEA. Personally speaking, I think that both the DEA and the ATF should go away. I think that both of them are agencies that should not exist. But I will leave it at that for today, and hopefully we'll see you guys. We should hear from the Senate parliamentarian here pretty soon, so maybe even this afternoon again.